In the Pacific theater of the Second World War, the submarine service was a high-stakes hunting ground. Operating deep behind enemy lines with zero support, American crews navigated a space where the survival odds were notoriously low and the environment was inherently unforgiving. Within that conflict, the USS Tang, hull number SS-306, became the undisputed predator of the fleet. By its fifth patrol, the boat had secured a record of 33 confirmed kills and over 116,000 tons of destroyed Japanese shipping. Despite operating in the most heavily patrolled waters of the Japanese Empire, the Tang was never outmaneuvered or defeated by an enemy warship. Through every engagement, the crew maintained total control over their targets. That flawless record was ended not by the Japanese Navy, but by a malfunction. One final torpedo left the tube, broached the surface, and curved sharply backward, hunting down the very ship that had launched it. The Tang had survived every depth charge and patrol boat the enemy could throw at it. Now, its survival depended on surviving a failure occurring inside its own hardware. This lethal performance was the result of a specific combination: a high-tensile steel hull allowing the Tang to dive far past its official 400-foot limit, and a commander named Richard O'Kane. O'Kane didn't believe in the standard safety of deep-water sniping. This schematic shows how O'Kane inverted naval doctrine. While other boats attacked from a safe distance, O'Kane preferred to stay on the surface and close the distance to under 1,000 yards. By maneuvering into the middle of the convoy, the Tang reduced the torpedo's travel time to almost nothing. At point-blank range, the Japanese ships had no time to see the wake or turn their rudders. They were hit before they knew they were targets. This proximity is exactly why the Tang was the most successful boat in the Pacific. But removing the enemy's reaction time removed his own safety margin. If a weapon failed here, there was zero space to escape. This map tracks the destruction of the Tang's first 4 patrols. O'Kane hunted in shallow, high-risk areas like the Yellow Sea, rapidly stacking up tonnage right along the Japanese coastline and disrupting vital domestic trade routes. The crew displayed the same precision during rescue missions. Off Truk Lagoon, the Tang operated under enemy guns to pull 22 downed American aviators from the water, so many that O'Kane had to cut the crew's rations in half to make it back to Pearl Harbor. In late October 1944, the Tang was patrolling the heavily mined Formosa Strait. O'Kane was given the option to join a wolf pack of 3 other submarines for protection, but he chose to hunt the strait alone. On the night of October 24th, the Tang intercepted a massive convoy carrying crated planes and reinforcements. Weaving through the formation on the surface, the crew fired 23 torpedoes. Almost every one found its mark, leaving a trail of blazing transports in the submarine's wake. By 2:30 a.m. on October 25th, the Tang had achieved a level of statistical perfection rarely seen in the war. They had nearly cleared their entire payload without a single mistake, leaving only one target remaining. The crew had exactly 1 torpedo left in the tubes. Ahead of them sat a single crippled transport ship, dead in the water and waiting for the final strike. That weapon was a Mark 18 electric torpedo. It was a stealth weapon, designed to leave no visible wake of bubbles. But the Mark 18 was also known for mechanical unreliability, specifically in its steering mechanisms. This animation traces the final 20 seconds of the Tang. The 24th torpedo left the tube and porpoised, but its rudder then jammed hard to the left. It locked into a tight circular path, turning 180 degrees to head directly back toward the boat. Watching from the bridge, O'Kane immediately called for emergency speed and a hard rudder. The Tang attempted a desperate fishtail maneuver to swing its stern out of the path. But because they were attacking at point-blank range, the torpedo only had to travel a few hundred yards to return to its source. They were 20 seconds from safety when the torpedo struck the stern. The explosion was so violent it broke the limbs of men as far forward as the control room, instantly flooding the aft compartments and dragging the boat down. O'Kane's doctrine relied on closing the distance to remove the enemy's chance to react. Now, that same lack of distance meant the Tang had no space to survive its own strike. The Tang came to rest on the ocean floor at 180 feet. Roughly 40 survivors crowded into the forward torpedo room. Amidst these cramped bunks, an electrical fire began filling the compartment with toxic smoke, heating the bulkheads until the paint began to melt and run. The crew was forced to attempt an escape using Momsen Lungs, basic rebreathers never before used at this depth in combat. To exit, they had to flood their own compartment to equalize the internal pressure with the crushing weight of the sea at 5.5 atmospheres. The men pulled themselves up a buoy line into the dark, forcing themselves to pause at knots tied every 10 feet. If they rose too fast, the air in their chests would expand until their lungs burst. If they stayed too long, they would succumb to the carbon monoxide. It is the only time in history Americans successfully escaped a sunken submarine without assistance from the surface. Out of the entire crew, only 9 men reached the surface and survived long enough to be rescued. The 9 survivors, including Richard O'Kane, treaded water until morning. They were eventually spotted and hauled onto the deck of a patrolling Japanese frigate. The Americans were immediately beaten and clubbed by the Japanese crew. The sailors administering the beatings were survivors from the very convoy the Tang had destroyed hours earlier, men pulled from the same water, bearing the burns and scars of O'Kane's final attack. The 9 captives were held in secret at the Omori POW camp. They spent the remainder of the war enduring torture and near starvation, their survival unknown to the United States until the Japanese surrender in 1945. Richard O'Kane returned to the United States weighing less than 100 pounds. For his leadership and the unmatched record of his boat, he was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Harry Truman. The USS Tang remains the most successful American submarine of the war. Its career stands as a record of fearless tactics and engineering, ultimately undone in 20 seconds by a single indiscriminate flaw.